last video, I told you guys I was going to go over bugling tips, calling tips, and today we're going to go over something way more important. The wind. Alright, today we're going to talk about probably the most important part of hunting in general, the wind. So by now, I would think that, maybe not, but everybody should know what thermals is. Hot air rising, cold air dropping. In the evening time, you know, if you're not above the thermals, I think that that's a pretty tough hunt. Prevailing wind, I think that, you know, as far as wind detection goes, you should be able, you know, I think telling what direction you're going in a prevailing wind isn't that hard. I think that for the most part, you know, it's blowing right in your face. It should be, and that's not that hard to figure out. The problem is when you get the thermals, whether it's hot air rising or cold air dropping, and then a prevailing mix, you get swirls, and that ain't that's a tough situation. You know, when you're hunting. In this one right here, this is my trademark right here, the ghost wind. Well, you say ghost wind, John. What is a ghost wind? Well, a ghost wind to me is, and this is the most important wind there is. And the reason that it's the most important wind is because most of the time hunters, including myself, you get to clicking along or you're sneaking along, and you know the leaves aren't rustling on the trees, the grass isn't moving. You're really not thinking about it that much, because as you're cruising along, you know, you don't see it. It's basically invisible, and it's the most important one of all because of that. There's always something going on when it comes to the wind. And what I mean by that is, you know, even sitting in my house right now, there's something going on. You'll see it drop. This is a deadly wind right here. It don't look like much is going on, but it's kind of lingering right here in my living room. But if I was to step out here on my porch, it's silent but deadly. And it has probably busted more hunters out there than any wind. More than thermals and more than the prevailing wind. You know, obviously you get into certain sides of the countryside where, you know, a prevailing wind is the dominant wind, and it'll be going in a certain direction, and then you'll have a thermal, which will be, you know, either pushing down or pushing up, and then it'll get into a bowl and it'll be swirling around, and those are probably the most hardest situations there are to hunt. Now what I'm going to go over and draw you a scenario is bull number one. So bull number one was a giant bull in Idaho that it was the very first day I got in there, and I dropped down into a canyon, let out a couple of cow calls, and two bulls come ripping through the meadow and went right up the ridge, and then I could hear another bull down on the left side of the meadow. When I say meadow, this was a beautiful meadow, giant meadow, and on the left hand side there was another bull. Well, I was listening to the tone of his voice. I know that you're not supposed to do that, but I do it. And that was the one that drew my attention to him. It turned out it was a herd bull, and he had, I don't know, he had in there 20, 25 cows, something like that. But I dropped off the ridge line and headed right at him, squirting all along, going down in there. But I will say that once I got down in there, it's amazing to me how you can get down, and you know what matters is if you get down in there and you're touching animals that have not been touched. What do I mean by that? The first one to disrupt natural behavior of elk in the backcountry is a bonus. They're kind of in a whole nother element. Even when it comes to the wind, you can get away with a lot more if you're the lucky guy that gets into a herd where they haven't been bookered up, is what I'm talking about. So I'm going to draw you a picture here. Now, let's call this the ridge line right here. And then that draw I was talking about is right here. It comes down and then it goes into a big old meadow right here. Right there. And this was kind of like it came up. And then there was another bench right here. And I'm sneaking in from here. Well, the thermals were just getting ready to turn over in the evening time. This is an evening hunt, and the thermals were dropping. And we had, I wouldn't even call it prevailing, but you know, sometimes the mountains do funny things. So it was coming this way. So I had the thermal pushing down, and I had this one coming in, and I hunted this thing after this bull 3 days in a row, and it was almost impossible. It drove me nuts. Almost impossible to hunt in there. It was just sit in this bowl and swirl. How do you hunt that? Well, there's a reason the elk are in there. You know, they use their nose to stay alive. And guys like me, and they're trying to, you know, squeeze in there and get a shot at one. But so that night, I ended up getting on this bull, and they were all hanging right in there, and they were just. He was, every time I cow called or bugled, he would just, you know, he was getting more and more revved up. I was lucky enough to get to within 40 yards. I said this on the last video. I was filming for NILCH'i, and the guy that was filming was coming down, clicked a rock, but I was lucky enough that I called that bull into 40 yards. It was the second time in my life I seen a bull, you know, he had a nice rack on him, and he was trying to figure out how he was going to get through these two trees, and I literally watched him turn his head like this so that he could scooch through the trees, and then once he got through that, it was one step, and it was going to be 40 yards, and he was going to get an arrow. But the only reason that I lucked out and I was able to even get as close as I did was that the thermals were kind of helping me out. They were pushing down, but then that crosswind was coming across, so it kind of had like a tunnel effect. And so let's just say it's coming this way, and then this is the evening air is pushing down, and it was pushing this way. The bull was right here, and they were going to follow those elk and go right up that draw and go up over the knob, and they were getting pressure from down below from the people that were coming in for elk season. But there's different scenarios in every hunt. That ghost wind, when I bring up that ghost wind, that is a killer. Most guys, including myself, you don't think a lot about it because you're just kind of out hunting and you don't think anything is going on. But it's going on. It's always, there's always something going on when it comes to the wind. I don't care whether you're a tree stand hunter, or you're a stalker, you know, you got to be paying attention to this at all times. What do you think that does to your confidence when you know they can't smell you when it comes to the shot? Kind of a big deal. If you know what's happening and you can literally check it, like this is on your bow and you can check it right there, you know they're not going to bust you and smell you. So that's scenario number one, bull number one. Bull number two is another bull in this. This is the same year. These two bulls, and I picked these two because they were learning lessons even for myself. And being such a wind guru in my brain, I can't believe I should have killed that bull, by the way. Wasn't from a camera guy, that was ridiculous. I felt like, oh, shouldn't even say that. But anyway, we'll draw up number two, bull number two. Okay, this one, we got a flap. And it kind of worked up a little bit like that. First thing in the morning, go sneaking in here. The elk were right here, did not know that, left them alone. That night I had bugled in there and the bull was up here. Up here. And so I knew where they were. The next day I went up in there, and once I got up in there I suspected that they were going to be up higher. Well, little did I know that when I got in there first thing at first light, I came in, and next thing I know, and there was no bugling, no nothing, no cows, no nothing. It was dead silent. And I got in there, and there was a slight crosswind coming from the top, just moving right down the mountain. And I stepped out from the reap rod into the open, and when I stepped out into the open, I glanced over to the left and taken mine. So now I spent probably 3 or 4 days down on that bull, on the last bull that I did not kill. And so this was a 5x5 raghorn bull, and at that point of the hunt, I was willing to take it. And so I looked at that bull. He was at 65 yards, 70 yards, right in there. And I was standing there, and I look over to the left, and he didn't even know I was there. And I checked the wind, and next thing I know, in my head, I just boom, boom, and it was coming down the draw, and in my brain I said, back out. Well, what do I mean, back out? Well, sometimes we get in those situations, and you know it's wrong. And you know what to do, and you know you need to do it. I could have backed out and snuck out of there very easily, and I should have. I should have backed out, and this is the hard part that most people get caught up in. I knew it was wrong. I should have backed out right then and there, and I turned around, looked at my camera dude, and not much of a camera guy, by the way. I should have backed out and made a loop and got down below. Let's just say I was right here. I should have backed out, way out, and went all the way around. Trust the wind. Made a loop. Any chance I had of killing that bull at that point, that was my only opportunity, was to back out. Because what happened next probably happens to a lot of you. You gotta listen to your heart. You gotta listen to your brain. I did not back out. I just held my ground for a couple seconds, and probably about, I don't know what it was, 60, 70 head of elk. It's what happens to everybody if you get winded. Sound like a bunch of horses running through the woods, man. Just sticks breaking, stuff. It just was like your heart drops. It just was over with. Boom, just like that. Boom, they're gone. They're out of your life. You gotta listen to what the wind's telling you at all times. I would have had an opportunity there. That was an opportunity blown. And really, in an elk season on public lands, you know, you're lucky you get one shot. You know, I consider that a successful opportunity. You don't get very many of those I usually go for 7, 8 days, 9 days, you know, if I'm hunting out of state. But, you know, I mean, the right thing to do here is, as soon as I seen the bull and I checked the wind and I already knew it was coming down the draw, would have been to back out. Just do the work, basically, is what I'm saying. Do the work and back out. They had no idea I was there. It was just elk being elk. And if I would have backed out, I would have had an opportunity, at least an opportunity. And knowing myself and the hunter that I am, I would have snuck up in there and probably, you know, started working them. But I didn't do that. They all ran off. That's bull number 2, scenario number 2. It wasn't a heavy wind. It was just kind of like the morning thermal wind just kind of pushing down, and I should have listened to And that's just rule number one, listen to what it's doing. Back yourself out and put the work in and get yourself into position. It was a killable, well, who knows what was in that herd. I mean, he was a satellite bull, who knows what was in there. You just don't know what could happen. But if they wind you, it's over so fast, and you know, your heart drops, and next thing you know, you're standing there with your bow in your hand going, oh my gosh, you know, what did I do wrong? Well, I didn't listen to the wind. Alright, so scenario number 3 happened to me last year. Bear hunting, early season in Washington. Recently, probably going on, I don't know, it's been a while, might be 15 years of one sticking, and those of you out there know what one sticking is. It's a pretty stealthy way to hunt, and I've been trying it out now with this initial ascent backpack, and using that system and putting my one stick in there. I got my water. I mean, what else do you need? Your sticks, your water, your bow, and you're able to pack your meat out and all that if you're lucky enough to get a kill. But so last year on this bear hunt, already knew there was a good amount of bears. I've never shot a bear over bait. I either stalk them or spend enough in areas that I know the berries are ripe, and they're going to be coming out of the woodwork to eat blackberries, blueberries, huckleberries. What else is there? Their favorite food is it's a high mountain raspberry. If you can find those high mountain raspberries, you better post up. They love those things. And so I get in there as quiet as I can, and I tell myself when I'm going in, it doesn't matter if I'm a little bit noisy. Excuse me, but one sticking, I got up in a tree that was out in the cut. So I'm going to draw it up like this. We're going to call this right here a tree line. So these are trees. How's my trees look, Kyle?
Yep.
Those are trees. Yeah. I'll put a couple more in there to make it realistic so you get my drift. Sorry about my artsy fartsy. My pen ain't working so good. It's brand new. But anyway, this is the tree line. So from down here, the wind was coming out of the north. And I set up, I came out, I'm about right here, dead center. Bears should come from anywhere. They can come out of the old growth timber, or this is tree line here too. There's a corner just like this. This is exactly what it looked like. Trees. That's my version of a tree right there. Anyway, the wind's coming from the north, going that way. I'm up in a tree 50 feet. This is a good example of, if you think this doesn't matter, it absolutely matters. Bears use their nose for everything out there does to survive. Like I said, the wind was coming out of the north. This little tree right here, I am out here. I'm going to wait for them to come out either from this old growth timber or this reap rod batch. And they do. And they come out into the fields and they eat all those berries I just said. And so everything, I was all set up perfectly. And I'm up in this tree 50 feet. And the reason I know I'm up in that tree 50 feet is because my one sticking setup is set up with a 50-foot rope. So when I'm done hunting at the end of the night, all I have to do is rappel down to the bottom of the tree, and I have a bow rope, cheater rope, that pulls it off the tree and it slips all the way down. Now, being 50 feet up in a tree, you would think you're pretty wind safe, correct?
Yep.
Not so much. So the wind's coming out of the north. About 6:30, I could hear a bear coming out of here. There's a bunch of salal right here. Bunch of salal. And a little opening right here. And then there's a blackberry patch right here, and there's little blackberry patches all over this. But that wind, and the wind does different things in different places. The terrain that you're hunting You have to pay attention to that. The terrain that you're hunting is, you just have to pay attention to it. It could be doing different things at different times of the day. What do I mean by that? Well, I thought I had it covered. I thought I had everything primo figured out. And being 50 feet, I was probably even higher than that because my rope goes 50. And when I got to the bottom, I dropped probably about 5 feet off the rope to the ground. And, I thought I was safe. But with that wind coming up over the ridge, it came up over that ridge. And that bear stepped out. And I'm not even kidding you. He walked, he was making, bears are noisy. He comes whistling out of here. I watched him. And I had my bow all set up. All I had to do was draw back. It was going to be about a 50-yard shot. And he came through right here, and I watched the bear come into here, and he disappeared, and I thought he dropped down into the slough, and I thought, oh, as soon as he comes out of the slough, he's going to be right here. Whoop, he's going to get one. I watched that bear. The wind was coming up over that ridge, being that this was a clear cut. Here's the timber. It came up over that, and I watched, this is what I'm talking about, that wind at 50 feet. Think about that, 50 feet high. That wind was coming up and hitting, and it hit the ridge line. And when it hit the ridge line, it was making a swoop. And I watched that bear stand up on his hind legs and go just like this and look right at me. And I thought, you gotta be kidding me. Busted. Just like that. What could I have done differently? Well, the wind does different things in the timber. So obviously once it comes up and I was in a cut and it was hitting the cut and it was hitting that ridge line, it would hit that ridge line and he was just swooping down into this open area. I mean, there's all that's in here is a bunch of scrub brush. What could I have done differently? If I was sitting right in here, and I'm not just saying that because the bear, well, I am saying that because the bear busted me. But if this is your reap rod and this is your timber, when you hunt, if I would have hunted the timber line right here, I'd have been way better off. Because that wind and that open terrain, all this open terrain, it's coming over the top of that sucker, and it's just, once it hits open country, it's just barreling down like that. Because there's nothing to force the wind up and around anything. But if you're in the timber, if I would have set up in the timber, it just does different things in the timber when you're in the timber. Even on the timber line, I should have been on the timber line. So that's scenario number 3. You really got to think about your setup in depth. You really do. You got to think about every situation. And if you're not, one of the things that's always in my mind is if I have a dead night, what did I do wrong? Us as hunters, we just don't know. It could be, what could our night have turned out to be if we're paying attention to it at all times. And if you're doing setups, like you're hunting out of a stand like I did everything right, other than I didn't set myself up into the timber. The timber has the timber's blocking that, and that was a prevailing wind that afternoon. It was just dominant and going in one direction. I knew better, but I did it anyway. I set up out in the open, and the cost of it was the rest of the night was crickets. And we want to put ourselves in hunting situations where we're successful. It was only about 5 days later I set up right there, and I had a sow come in, and she didn't smell me at all. And I was about 50 feet up in the tree. This was last year, and she walked within 13 yards and walked right up to my tree, and I had to pee so bad I took a leak. And she walked right up, and she was sniffing, and I came full draw, put the pin right on her, and then decided to myself, do I want to shoot a bear for my own ego? My own, because I was probably 2 months into my hunt, and I let the bow down and let her walk. I had to make an educated decision on it, because I sometimes got to ask myself, am I doing this this for the right reasons. Meaning, is this something that I want to harvest, or should I let her go and do her thing? And I chose to let her go. I consider that a success. That anytime I can get a bear to within 13 yards of no bait, I feel like I did something right. I won that night, and so that's why I didn't shoot her. If it was a big boar, probably would have got an arrow, and I would have moved on, because you get 2 tags in Washington. But that's number 3. I don't know how many of you guys out there have watched this guy, but every time I watch this guy, I feel like there's a reason that he's successful, and he's been doing it a long time. And I'm not a name dropper, but I'm gonna do it in this sense of the fact that every time I watch it, when I started doing this, probably the last 12 to 13 years, my success rate has went up. Everything that, if there was something that I wanted to shoot with my bow, I was just becoming very successful. Why was that? Well, I was prototyping this product, and I had it on my bow, and I was paying great detail to this, to the wind. And Billy Moles, if you guys have not seen his stuff, you will watch Billy Moles go to great detail to use the wind either to his advantage, or what do I want to say? He will go to great distances to go around the terrain and obstacles or whatever it is, because he knows. He's done it long enough, and he is a professional guide, and he's very successful, and the reason that he is because he pays great detail to this, to the wind. Every time I'm watching Billy and he's talking about thermals and prevailing winds, in my brain I'm like, when I think about that guy, I think about, thank goodness Billy's not out there with a gun, because man, he's guiding clients. If he was out there just on his own as a hunter, that guy would kill a lot of stuff. Well, he already does. But when you're talking about, grizzly bears and brown bears, and he pays great detail on his sheep hunts and stuff to the wind, which was, in the beginning when I started watching Billy, I was like, sheep? They got good noses? And, I would think that, it wouldn't be as important, but especially in that big country that he's hunting. But man, I'm telling you, he is always paying attention to the wind. I seen one video where he lit a lighter and sucked it into his mouth and blew it out. Billy's gonna get sent some NILCH'is, so that all he has to do is just pop it just like that, so he doesn't have to do that anymore. Every time I see Billy using a lighter, I'm like, Billy, you're killing me. But he pays great detail to the wind, and for us as hunters, it's just, to be honest with you, you absolutely have to do that. And sometimes I think that when you look at it and you're like, it's just about work ethic. And I think that his work ethic is like, look, if we want to kill this thing, this is what we have to do. And he's dragging his clients over giant mountains in order to do it. But if you look at those clients and the smiles on their faces, man, and they put in a lot of work. And, really what it's all about is, in the end, is like, we all want to be successful, and sometimes that's what it takes. You got to put the work in. And I've been doing that my whole life, putting the work in ever since I was a kid. When I was younger, I just kind of went through the woods aimlessly, and I had an old timer stop me and said, you know, listen here, young buck, you're walking past more animals than you know. And I didn't really at the time even want to hear what he was saying, you know, wandering aimlessly through the woods thinking I'm going to walk a deer down. And blacktail hunting back then was my thing. Built my own wood stands and, you know, had them all mounted up. And I knew enough then to get my scent off the ground for blacktails. The gray ghost is a tough one to hunt, and I've lived here my whole life. I should have a wall full of them. Instead, I got a wall full of mule deer. They're a tough animal to hunt. But I wanted to name drop that one, and I don't like doing that, bringing up other people, but every time I watch how he hunts, it's always based around what the wind is doing. And I think that, you know, at this point in my life and my career of, you know, I've even asked myself, where do I go with my hunting career? Well, I'll probably always hunt. But, you know, I think maybe it's directed more as an educator. Now, I know my artwork wasn't that good, but those scenarios are for real. Hunting's hunting. I don't care who you are. Hunting is hunting, and you better be paying attention to the wind at all times. Do I have a product that I'm selling? Yes, I worked very hard at it. I've made it very easy for these things to be mounted on just about anything that you want to. This is a little bino clip. Why is this more important than the old school pull it out of your bino harness? Well, let's count the steps. I'm hunting, I want to check the wind. You got 1, you got to open it. 2, you got to shake it. 3, you got to give it a squirt. 4, now I got to put it back. If it worked, you close it up. Is that 5, Kyle?
Something like that.
That's 5. Now you got to put it back. 6. How you got to do that? And getting it back in is a pain in the butt. We'll put it back. I don't know, is that 6, 7 steps? How many was that?
6 or 7.
6 or 7. You know, you pull the plug before you get out of your truck. I shouldn't have to tell you, haul your trash out, throw it in the garbage. 1 step. Right on the bow. Now, I don't know if it gets any easier than that. The reason I brought up the Billy Moles situation is I don't know if I've ever seen Billy guide a bow hunter. I don't. It was very important to me to bring him up because I think it's probably 95%. I really don't know. I've never seen him guide a bow hunter, but most of them are rifle hunters. And when I go to these shows, and I go to all the shows now, the rifle hunters are by far the hardest guys to sell on the wind. And I don't know why that is. I'm not opposed to rifle hunting. I've shot several bears with my 243. Yes, a 243. If it's a well-placed bullet, it's gonna kill it. That's why I brought that up, was because I'm not a name dropper guy, but you know what? Rifle hunting and rifle hunters at the shows are a hard sell, and I don't know why. I mean, this hat clip that I have right here on my hat clip was developed for the rifle guys and guys on the go. Meaning, how hard is this if you're a rifle guy? It's not hard. And you don't have to open anything up, you just squeeze it. And you're always checking the wind. Why are you always checking the wind? Because you need to be checking the wind from the minute you get out of your truck until you decide to put that arrow back in your quiver and it's time to go home and have chili. That's just the facts. You need to be checking it all the time, and I do. There's not a moment in the day that I'm not checking. And if I got an animal coming in, I'm checking it just for a peace of mind so that I know that I can settle that pin and make that kill. calms your nerves, lets you know you're in a winning situation. At the shows, I do a little thing where I show people this little trick, being from Washington. Kyle, do you have a good zoom in on this? Is it in the picture?
It's in the picture.
Okay. This little thing right here, completely waterproof. I'm gonna dunk it underwater. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's submerged. And being from Washington, this was an important thing for me. And I'll bring it out, and guess what? Rock and roll. So, is it waterproof? Absolutely, it needs to be. The convenience of it, there isn't anything I haven't thought of when it comes to the wind. I've spent my whole life hunting, and I got a lot invested into it. And this is one thing I worked really, really hard on. And for the guys that have watched all my other videos, I thank you very much, because it means a lot to me that you guys are actually watching the videos. And could surely use a few more clicks on the subscriber side of things, but I'm gonna do that one more time for you, because people at the shows, as soon as I do this, their eyeballs open up, and it's a pretty good selling point. Am I trying to sell you something? Yeah, absolutely. Do you need it? Yes, absolutely. You need it, and you need to be checking it all the time. This little bottle right here is the difference between success or going home and having chili early. I'm gonna dunk it. I'm gonna bring it out. There's no tricks to it. It's just waterproof. All you guys in the Midwest that hunt whitetails, you know, you guys are important to me too. And I know that there's a lot of guys that hunt whitetails, hunt in tree stands. And I don't do it any differently here for blacktails. I like to go on, you know, out on one stick and I'm on the go. But, you know, the first thing I do once I get everything all set up, you know, if you could only imagine this being hung on your bow hanger, and, you know, whenever you feel like checking the wind, all you gotta do is just reach over and give it a pop. So, you know, you guys are important to me too. This isn't just a Western hunter thing. It's for everybody. All hunting should be checking the wind. The nice piece of mind that you get from having it and it being that easy is you're going to use it more often. So I'm going to go over the 3 different styles that I have that you can purchase on NILCH'i.com, and that is these right here. So we have, even for the whitetail guys, we listened to you when we were at the ATA show, and you can get this pack right here. It's got a nice drop time buck on it, so you can be looking at what you're trying to kill out there, give you some incentive. This comes with the hat clip, the bino clip, and the zip tie, and you can zip it down right to your bow, or wear it on your hat or that. If you are a whitetail guy, we have these as well in the adhesive, which goes right, it just sticks right on your bow. And the adhesive on those is, I worked a long time on finding the right adhesive, and it took me a minute too. But that's that one right there, and you can cut it any way you want down any side, stick it right on your bow. And then this one's for the elk hunting guys. It's basically the same setup. So you can get any of these packs off of NILCH'i.com, and then this one is the least expensive of all of them, and the one I love the most. You know, all our hunting gear that we have nowadays tallies up in the thousands. This is a $10 product. Think about that, $10 for that thing. These are a little bit more money because there's a little bit more involved, but I wouldn't go in the woods without that one on my bow. And for rifle hunters, you can stick that right to the stock of your gun and be checking it all the time. or you get one of these and you got the other options for it. So, once again, completely waterproof. I love this part, just because I spent a lot of time on that. Little trade secret. I appreciate each and every one of you. I thank you for watching the video.